Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to another segment of our sports industry leadership series. My name is Paulina Manis. I'm joined by my co-host Ben Schleider, and today we're joined by Ellie Nachmany, former NYU alumni in the sports business program, current JD candidate at Harvard Law School, and an expert in the novel topic of name, image, and likeness in collegiate sports. Ellie, welcome.
Well, Paulina, thank you so much for having me, and it's really great to be here. I guess back virtually at NYU, but still really nice.
Absolutely. So we'll start off with some questions. So why do you think the NCAA has historically been so hesitant to allow players to really profit off their name, image, and likeness, and why now has that become more lenient in the field?
Well, I think it's twofold. So the first is you have the NCAA is perhaps rightly worried about the slippery slope that it's not so much their concern that the players, at least according to this rationale, are going to be able to be paid by third parties. The issue that they see down the road is, well, if we allow this, then the next step is the mandating of the colleges pay the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Some colleges can do it, some colleges can't do it. And so I think that they're worried about the down the road inequity that could result. The second thing I think is a bit more fundamental to the business model as it currently stands and particularly relates to the name, image, and likeness, that the NCAA is very keen on amateurism, that they like to hold out their product as it's amateur athletes and they're competing for the love of the game. That changes a little bit, right? When you get third party money to come in, it could make the playing field not level if you have boosters for some of these schools. So let's say, there's an alumni who's a multimillionaire or a billionaire and just starts, paying players for their name, image, and likeness and says, but I'd really like you to go to, XYZ school. I'd really like you to go to Oklahoma. That could be a problem. And so I think it's twofold. One is the more down the road, this could lead to colleges having to pay the players. And in the more immediate term, I think the NCAA just likes to be able to say they have amateur athletes.
Right, absolutely.
So OBannon versus NCAA was the antitrust class action lawsuit that really set the stage for this whole debate. So how has that original case played a role in the evolution of name, image, and likeness regulations? And has OBannon himself been a part of any of these discussions?
Yeah, so the OBannon case in the Ninth Circuit in California, going back to the first question, why is this relevant now? This was one of the first cracks in the dam, big crack in the dam for will college athletes get compensated? Now, the facts of OBannon are actually quite interesting. He was over, I think, a friend of his son's house, and he saw the old, if any of you ever played the NCAA basketball games on the PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, and he saw himself there on the screen. Now, it was a retired players, legends players type thing. And he said, hey, hold on a second, that's me and I'm not getting paid for it. And, you probably spent 40, 50, 60 bucks on the game. Where's my cut? So, O'Bannon sues under an antitrust theory. The Ninth Circuit was amenable to it. The NCAA has rarely fared as well as the professional leagues in court under an antitrust theory. And so the Ninth Circuit agrees that, yes, there is an anti-competitive issue here. The way to cure that in the immediate term is to allow the provision of cost of attendance scholarships, the full cost of attendance for the players. But they still say, hold on, we do recognize that the NCAA does have a market rationale in the amateurism. That, if we do allow the name, image, and likeness payments, then we're going to run afoul of this market rationale that the NCAA proffers that they thought reasonable. I think, how does O'Bannon bear on the current state of affairs of what we're seeing? Is that O'Bannon sort of showed us what the limits might be of vindicating these rights or expanding the law through judicial forums. That courts can only do so much. And so if you really want to get the changes that I think a lot of folks in the college athlete representation landscape would like to see, it probably has to be through the state and ultimately the federal legislature, Congress. Now, has OBannon played a role in the current debate? Of course, he's all over the place. He was really a big fan of. There was a bill passed recently in the California state legislature. He said it changed the game, which it probably did. And O'Bannon himself, he was a basketball player for UCLA, so keenly attuned to what's going on in California, which has been a leader on this issue.
So you mentioned it a bit earlier, but can you shed some more light on this competitive advantage that some schools, like in California, might have where athletes might gravitate to schools in those states because of this new change in legislation?
Sure. Look, I hesitate to be definitive about this and say yes, absolutely. One state will get to a point where they have a competitive edge over the schools in other states because we just don't know. We don't have any sort of empirical basis from which to make that point. The closest analog maybe is if you're thinking about how do the different legislative structures of compensation in different states work to move athletes around one way or another. Might be you look at in professional sports, the difference in state income taxes. Is a free agent more likely to go to a state like Florida than the free agent would be in the NFL, NBA, whatever, to go to a state with a higher income tax? I can't think of one off the top of my head. I don't know that that's the most salient concern for anybody in these leagues. It might be. I think this was discussed when Tom Brady was thinking about where was he going to move on from the Patriots to, and he ends up going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which are in Florida, and so he undoubtedly has a smaller income tax bill to pay. I do think that the analysis is a bit different because for professional athletes, the basis is still hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. For the college athletes, it's nothing. I do think that if you were to look at certain states and you say, okay, I can go to California and I can play for USC and I'll be able to do endorsement deals and the like. But if I go to, say, Alabama, I won't be. Yeah, that probably would be a relevant consideration for people. Is it going to make, a five-star college foot or a high school football recruit pick, I'm going to go to, Fresno State over Georgia? I don't think it would. But on the margins, might it make a difference? I imagine it would be. And then there probably is an asymmetry when it comes to the income of the family of the player going into the college process. So a lot of factors at play. But again, I hesitate to say, yes, absolutely, this would change the game. I think people think it would, though.
How close do you think we are to a federal legislation being passed, time-wise?
If you asked me 6 months ago, I probably would have said closer than we are now. The first question is what's going to happen in the Senate election in Georgia. Now, a lot of this legislation, originally, this was a concern of the House of Representatives. So Congressman Mark Walker of North Carolina was very interested in this issue. And he had proposed a bill a little while ago and had been promoting it for a while that he wanted to solve this issue through the tax code. And he was going to make a change to the tax code, amateur organizations, that sort of thing. He partnered with, he's a Republican, he partnered with a Democrat. It was a bipartisan proposal. The Democrat was Cedric Richmond of Louisiana. The bill never really went anywhere. And then there were earlier this year rumblings that the House was going to end up taking a lead role on it because Anthony Gonzalez, who is a congressman from Ohio, you may remember him, he was a wide receiver at Ohio State and then for the Indianapolis Colts, that he was going to be the leader on this bill. And I think he's still interested in the proposal. What's happened now is that there are a number of different senators who have taken a keen interest in the legislation. And there are multiple proposals that seem to be emerging. Marco Rubio, I think, has put forward a bill that focuses on the antitrust implications that I believe, if I'm reading the text of the bill correctly, would confer antitrust protection if a sufficient set of rules for compensation are created. On the flip side of that, Cory Booker, who actually was I believe, an All-American tight end at Stanford University, he has proposed what he calls a college athletes bill of rights. I think COVID has definitely thrown a bit of a wrench into this, because now the Senate is saying, well, if we're going to do a college athletics bill, at least some folks on the Democratic side are saying this. They're saying, well, it can't just be, that we're going to address the name, image, and likeness issue. That, we've got to look at health, safety, and wellness. We've got to look at, are the transfer rules equitable? All sorts of other different things where Congress would want to assert some level of jurisdiction over college sports. Now, of course, the response on the Republican side is, well, hold on, we were just getting around to the name, image, and likeness stuff, and now all this other stuff in the bill, they're not as comfortable with. So I think that there was probably more of a window 6, 8, 10 months ago, pre-COVID. At the same time, as some of the state laws start to come into play, if we do end up seeing that there is a serious inequity in terms of people are picking, everybody's going to Florida, as opposed to, say, a state that does not have, right, Alabama, Georgia, a law, then yeah, Congress might act. But I don't know that we're as close as we were.
So just shifting gears a little bit, obviously sponsorship plays a huge role in athletics as a whole, but especially in collegiate athletics, and maybe not necessarily with the players themselves, but definitely with the institutions. So how do you see sponsorship, like as a whole, and the model shifting with the introduction of NIL legislation in collegiate athletics?
I think it's important to think about sponsorship in two different ways. So what we tend to think of sponsorship wise, I mean, right, we all either go to or went to NYU. We see this at a national level. We're thinking about Nike, Under Armour, Gatorade, the big names. And is it going to be an individual license? Is it going to be a group license? These are questions I think that Congress will ultimately have to resolve, of how do you grant the right for getting publicity. That I think is a bit more straightforward. That we can analyze quite easily. I mean, Nike is going to have no issue, once the relevant statutory framework is in place, getting a deal done with a Trevor Lawrence type, or a Justin Fields type. That's easy. The bigger questions come, I think, what I discussed before. Okay, if you do a name, image, and likeness bill, how much do we care, if at all, about the possibility of local boosters who have a lot of money saying, hey, I really want you to play for the University of Miami. I have made a career in, say, financial services, and I have hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm just going to pay you a lot of money, and we're going to call it, a name, image, and likeness deal. Now, that's not the university paying, but that seems like it would press on the same inequity issue that I think the NCAA is very worried about. The NCAA wants us to live in a world where, in theory, Boise State can beat Notre Dame. That may get a little bit harder when we start to have it be a comparison of the financial stability of the alumni base. So that, I think, gets into a more interesting question. Now, the final thing to dispose of is you still have local sponsorships. So not everything is Nike, not everything is Gatorade. There are some local car dealerships, I would imagine, in Athens, Georgia, that would love to have Stetson Bennett say, hey, great cars here at the local Hyundai dealer. I would think that would be a deal that somebody could sign, or that, say, the 5 offensive linemen on, gosh, I don't know, the University of Virginia, that they endorse a local pancake house, and they say, we're offensive linemen, we love pancakes, and we love pancakes here at the local pancake place. These are much more minor deals, but at the same time, those can make a significant impact if you put a few more $1,000 in a kid's pocket. That's great. The last thing is, this sort of touches on sponsorship. I think a lot of people really want to see the EA Sports video games come back, the NCAA football, NCAA basketball. And if you get to a point where you have a group license, you're on track to get that back. But EA Sports is not going to do anything. They've indicated this. They're not going to do anything until they have very clear legal safe harbor. After they saw what happened in the OBannon lawsuit, which really centered on EA Sports' game.
It's kind of been fascinating, how these collegiate video games have, played a role in name, image, and likeness legislation, like from the get-go. And it's kind of been a barometer of where we've been at as a nation, whether whether the environment for these games to succeed is there or not.
Well, I think two things are going on. The first is you have a tremendous boom right now in esports, and the pandemic for the esports industry only poured gasoline on the fire, right? Because if everybody's home, and nobody wants to interact with one another, I'll just fire up the PlayStation. I'll stream it on Twitch, and everybody's home, so people are watching. And so as EA Sports and 2K Sports and other video game makers start to see the profits rolling in from other franchises like Madden, like NBA 2K, like MLB The Show, they start to think, well, we'd love to bring back NCAA football. The second thing is this is for the league now, this is for the NCAA, the way in which the availability of the video game actually intersects with increased fan interest and engagement with the sport. I can watch college football on Saturday. I can, even if I'm a big fan, listen to, the Paul Feinbaum show, right? Or I'll watch during the week the SEC Network. But I've got to really be a fan. I can kind of be a casual fan and still play on like a Tuesday night the NCAA football video game on my PlayStation. And over time, people, they do that and they become more interested in it. It's a whole new audience. It's a whole new group. And then, I've got this great dynasty that I've been playing with Clemson. I love Travis Etienne. I'm going to buy a jersey of his. And now you see how it all starts to intersect, right? Because the jersey now you can also sell with Etienne on the back if you have a framework in place for the compensation. So you're trying to draw more people in, you're trying to build your audiences. And ultimately, I think for a lot of folks, this is a dollars and cents question.
Definitely. So what measures do you think these students athletes should take to really protect themselves and their brand in the future?
Well, I think the representation question is an interesting one. You want to have good advice. At the same time, I think we've seen the NFL Players Association has some programs by which they certify agents, they certify financial advisors. There's a piece that recently came out in the Harvard Journal of Sports and Entertainment Law, actually by a friend of mine, criticizing the NFLPA's registered financial advisor program. So you want to create it in a way that it has safeguards, but look, these are 18 to 22-year-old folks. They need guidance on how do you build a brand? How do you monetize it? People around them who have their best interests at heart. The problem is that when you get the combination of that kind of money and young people, a lot of bad people that come, and want to prey on the student athletes. So I think the protection question probably concerns a little bit of, who are we letting have access to the athletes and putting them in positions of trust with the athletes. The secondary thing, I think, though, also is, the university and the athlete actually have quite a mutually beneficial interest here. The university, just as much as the athlete, wants people to watch the games on Saturdays. They don't want any legal drama or anything that would reflect poorly on the athlete or the school. And so I think if they don't already, universities will realize that it can actually be quite beneficial to them to promote and protect the brand of the individual athletes. And if you're sharing the revenue, okay, 50% of a lot is still a good amount. 100% of nothing is nothing. That makes sense.
No, absolutely. So from all of us at NYU, we just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today on such a novel topic. We hope that we can have more meaningful engagement with alumni such as yourself, hopefully you again in the future in our series. And we'll just stay safe and have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, and just want to say that the curriculum at NYU and the sports management program has really helped me so much in law school. It just tremendous group of professors, tremendous lineup of classes, and so if you're there right now, really enjoy it and take full advantage because it's quite an experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ellie.